Dementia, according to the CDC, is not a specific disease, but rather a way to describe the impaired ability to remember, think, or make decisions that interferes with daily activities. Currently, over 6 million Americans aged 65 and older are affected by dementia, and the number is projected to rise to 14 million by the year 2060. The rise in the number of people with memory disorders means that millions more caregivers' lives will be affected by dementia as well. Elder care in the United States has reached a crisis point that is often referred to as the other pandemic, and family caregivers are bearing the worst of the burden.
I take care of my mother, Nancy Hutchison, who is 91 years old. I'm a retail pharmacist, so I did have some knowledge of dementia and, Alzheimer's and other issues of age-related dementia, but I certainly have learned more now. She was actually diagnosed was probably when she was 89. She was having memory issues for a while, and then she started having some hallucinations and stuff at night.
I was an in-home primary sandwich caregiver to my mother, who had dementia. I knew a lot about it because of my aunts and uncles who had it previously as well, so I had a pretty good idea of what dementia was. My mother thought there was something wrong with her memory, and I was thrilled because I thought there was something wrong with her memory too. So we went to the doctors, and I thought, well, this is great. We're going to go to the doctor, and we're going to talk to the doctor, and everything's going to be great. And it wasn't. She was 81 at that point. From that day on, I took the watch and wait approach and the stealth caregiving, if you will. So I kept an eye out to make sure everything was okay, her pills were okay, and that type of thing.
According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, 85% of caregivers for the elderly in the U.S. are family members. The burden of care falls on wives and daughters. 25% of women between 45 and 64 years old are caring for an older relative. 10% of caregivers have had to cut back on their work hours, and 6% have left their jobs completely.
After she was diagnosed, things were pretty steady for a while, and then we had some issues where she would walk out of the house at night at 1:30 in the morning. The state police knocked on the door because she was walking the dog down the middle of the road. That was the first time she had left the house at night, and that certainly concerned me a great deal.
The not realizing what she was doing, the using a whole bottle of detergent for her laundry, or buying the same thing over and over again, or telling me that people were outside that weren't outside. Those types of behaviors were challenging.
And I've been full-time caring for the past almost 2 years. Luckily, I do have some help from my sister who lives nearby, but that's one night a week, and I'm really responsible for everything.
I'm so tired.
Yeah.
I was a realtor for 20 years, and I put my license in escrow in 2015 because I knew things were changing to the point where I couldn't continue to do everything that I was doing. And then that year, my mother moved in with us. Caregiving affects everything because it changes. You're so overwhelmed by the whole process, and you're so overwhelmed by the actual doing and the emotional aspect. You don't want to talk to anybody because that's what you're surrounded by. And you don't bring that to other people because and this isn't in a mean way, they don't understand it because they haven't experienced that. So everything changes in your life when you're a caregiver.
Dementia caregivers are under extraordinary stress. Their social connections and outside activities take second place to protecting their family member with dementia, especially as the symptoms worsen. A review of the research shows that they are at risk for loneliness, feelings of isolation, and depression. In fact, 30 to 40% of dementia caregivers are affected by depression and the accompanying feelings of loneliness and social isolation.
Probably the hardest thing is when she's very anxious and I can't seem to calm her down. Just emotionally, that's really hard. And then sometimes she'll get really angry and say things that are not like her at all. I do have friends and family and friends on Facebook. Every once in a while, I'll post something that when things just are really hard. Not that I've utilized those so much, but it's nice to know that other people have gone through it too.
I don't think you can really understand what it's like until you're in it, because you can see it and you can see that people care for other people and the things that they do, but it's different when you're in it because there is no getting around it and there's no getting away from it.
What was the hardest thing for you being your mother's caregiver?
Knowing that I couldn't do anything to help her. Knowing that at the end of the road, this was going to kill her, no matter what I did.
Despite the knowledge of the inevitable end, Roseanne still needed to remain in the present to care for her mom and for herself.
When I moved my mom in 2015, I scoured the internet for resources and information, because that's how I roll. And I found this site called Daughterhood that had just started in 2015. And I loved the idea of it, I loved the name of it, and I loved the writing that Anne did about saying, you know, we have play groups when we're raising our children, but we don't have play groups when we're taking care of our parents, which is part of the isolation. And that's where the support group came from.
Research shows that even modest interventions, such as support groups like Daughterhood, can reduce the sense of isolation and improve upon a caregiver's mental state.
My colleague Christine Lee, who owns Casa Companion Home Care, a home care agency, and I co-founded the first Daughterhood Circle and created that model. And then that model was used throughout the country by Daughterhood. Ann Tomlinson is the founder of Daughterhood. And we met with her years ago now, over 6 years ago now, and asked her permission to actually create these Daughterhood Circles. When you're caregiving, especially with dementia, you absolutely 100% need local contacts. So the Daughterhood Circles is what Christine and I came up with to solve for that problem.
It's just having those real people to talk to. I mean, I could go to the web and just research the fire out of it. But I think just having that, because I had it in person with Daughterhood and it was wonderful. It's more personalized in that group because they really get to know you. Hearing other people's stories help, and having other people listening to your stories, and then just some really practical pointers you can get, kind of a slightly warmer connection.
Most caregivers mention the value of sharing personal experiences in keeping their feelings of isolation, loneliness, and depression from taking over.
I think the biggest thing is to make sure you get some help, some outside help, so you can carve out some time to yourself, and that you really go into it with a mindset of you want whoever you're caring for to feel loved. And remember that that's probably the most important thing.
Don't be afraid. It's hard not to feel guilty, but try not to, because you and your person will be better off to get help.
There's all kinds of things that cause that stress and trauma. But Daughterhood helps you to actually get through that and know that, yes, this is going to happen. And you have tools to work with, and you have people around you to support you.